Right now, most people are one bad storm, one grid failure, or one empty store shelf away from a full-blown crisis, but a small, quietly confident group of people won't even flinch. The question is brutally simple. Which group are you in? Because the difference between panic and calm isn't luck, it isn't money, it isn't even timing. It comes down to a handful of smart decisions made before things go wrong. And that's exactly what this video is about. We're going to walk through the essential 20% of preparations that cover 80% of real-world emergencies. Not bunkers, not conspiracy theories, just honest, practical steps that actually protect the people you love when things get uncomfortable. This channel, my channel, exists to cut through the noise, skip the fear-mongering, and give you clear, usable information. If that sounds like what you need, hit subscribe right now, because we're just getting started, and this is going to be one of the most useful things you've watched all year. Let's talk about the framework before anything else, because without it, people waste money on gear they'll never use. The 80-20 principle, sometimes called the Pareto principle, says that a small fraction of your inputs produce most of your results. In preparedness, that means instead of trying to prepare for every wild scenario imaginable, you focus hard on the situations that are actually most likely to affect you. Power outages, severe storms, supply chain disruptions, flooding. These are the real emergencies that real families face. Nail those, and you've covered the overwhelming majority of what life might throw at you. Now, here's the first thing everyone knows they should do, and almost nobody actually does properly. Water. Clean, accessible, reliable water. You can go weeks without food, your body starts shutting down in days without water. That single fact should reorganize your entire priority list immediately. The general guidance from emergency experts is at least 15 gallons of stored water per person. Break that down, and it's roughly 1 gallon per day for 2 weeks, covering drinking, cooking, and basic sanitation. Does that sound like a lot? Good, because it is. But if you're starting from zero, don't let the full number overwhelm you. Start with what you can manage today. Even a few gallons buys you critical time in the opening days of a crisis when panic is highest and options are fewest. But stored water alone isn't enough, and here's why. Supply gets depleted faster than people expect, and containers can degrade or become contaminated over time. That's why you need active purification options as a backup layer. A portable water filter, handheld or countertop, can turn questionable water into something safe. Purification tablets are cheap, lightweight, and extremely reliable. UV treatment pens kill pathogens in minutes, and plain, unscented household bleach, used in the right measured quantities, can disinfect water in a pinch. Here's the part most people skip entirely. Practice these methods before you actually need them. Right now, pull out those purification tablets, read the label, understand the process. Because when your hands are shaking and your kids are scared and the tap isn't working, that is not the moment to figure out how this stuff works. There's also a maintenance piece that gets ignored constantly. Stored water doesn't last forever. Bacteria builds up, containers degrade. Every 6 months, you need to rotate your supply. Set a recurring calendar reminder. Treat it the same way you treat replacing your smoke alarm batteries. Non-negotiable, automatic, done. Make sure every person in your household knows where the water is stored and understands at least one purification method. Clean water is the absolute foundation of everything. Without it, nothing else matters. Now let's talk food, and this is where smart strategy beats panic buying every single time. Your minimum target is roughly 23,000 calories per person, which works out to about 1,500 calories per day across 2 weeks. That number isn't generous, it's functional. In an emergency, the goal isn't comfort eating. It's staying sharp, staying energized, and staying capable of making good decisions under pressure. 1,500 calories keeps you moving, it keeps your brain working, it keeps you from making desperate, dangerous choices. What foods should you store? Focus on shelf-stable items that require little or no refrigeration and minimal preparation. Canned goods, dried pasta, white rice, oats, peanut butter, crackers, nuts, dried fruit. These are the backbone. Mix in some freeze-dried or vacuum-sealed long-term options if your budget allows. The rule for preparation is simple. Every item you store should either be ready to eat straight from the package or need nothing more than hot water. Because cooking from scratch over a limited fuel source while stressed and potentially dealing with other problems at the same time is genuinely hard. The simpler your food setup, the better you'll manage. Here's a smarter approach than stockpiling everything in one weekend. Add 1 or 2 extra items every single time you go to the grocery store. A couple of extra cans of beans, an extra jar of peanut butter. Over a few months, you build a serious supply without ever feeling the financial pinch. And as you build it, account for dietary restrictions, allergies, and honest preferences. Your food storage only works if people will actually eat it under stress. Which brings up the most important test most people never do. Eat your stored food. Cook with it. Serve it to your family before an emergency happens. Because discovering in the middle of a crisis that everyone hates the freeze-dried meals you've been carefully storing for 2 years is a disaster inside a disaster. Rotate your supplies. Use the oldest items first. Replace what you consume. This keeps your stockpile fresh, your family familiar with the food, and your budget manageable over time. Don't overlook comfort items. For kids especially, a familiar snack or something sweet can completely change the emotional temperature in a tense situation. Chocolate, pudding cups, candy, these aren't silly indulgences, they're morale tools, and morale is a survival resource. Now let's move to something ancient and still one of the most powerful tools in any emergency situation: fire. The ability to make fire gives you warmth, the ability to cook food, the ability to purify water by boiling, and even the ability to signal for rescue. It's a force multiplier that costs almost nothing to prepare for. Keep lighters and waterproof matches in sealed containers in multiple locations. Then add backup options: ferro rods, magnesium fire starters, and cotton balls pre-soaked in petroleum jelly, which catch a spark instantly, even in damp conditions. Here's the separator between people who are genuinely prepared and people who just own gear. The prepared ones practice. They don't wait until they're cold, stressed, and under pressure to figure out how a ferro rod works. They've already struck it 100 times. They know the angle, the pressure, the technique. Try it this weekend. Light a fire with your backup tools. Get comfortable with each method. For fuel, keep dry tinder on hand, small dry sticks, old newspaper, cardboard scraps, and here's one of the best free fire-starting materials available: dryer lint. It ignites almost instantly, costs you nothing, and accumulates naturally in your home. Keep a bag of it with your fire supplies. Compact camping stoves that run on butane or alcohol are excellent for controlled, efficient cooking, especially indoors, but only use models that are explicitly rated safe for indoor use. Carbon monoxide is invisible, odorless, and lethal. Don't learn that lesson the hard way. Let's talk about light, because darkness is more psychologically disorienting than most people anticipate. When the grid goes down, it goes dark fast, and that darkness hits harder emotionally than people expect, especially for kids. Your lighting setup should start with headlamps for each person in the household, not just one shared flashlight. Individual headlamps, because they keep both hands free for whatever you're doing. Keep them charged. Store spare batteries in sealed bags to prevent corrosion. Nothing is more demoralizing than grabbing a flashlight in a crisis and finding the batteries have corroded to uselessness. Candles and lanterns provide ambient light and can add meaningful warmth in a small space. Rechargeable LED lanterns and solar-powered lights are excellent modern tools, but never rely entirely on technology. Batteries drain. Solar panels don't charge on overcast days. Technology has failure modes that low-tech solutions don't. Glow sticks are underrated. They're cheap, require no power, last for hours, and are perfect for marking pathways in the dark so nobody trips and gets hurt. They're also great for kids because they feel like something fun rather than something scary. The rule for lighting is the same as for everything else in preparedness: redundancy. Multiple sources, multiple backup plans. Make sure every person in your home knows where the light sources are stored and how to use each one. Now here's something that gets underestimated until people are genuinely suffering from it: temperature control. Managing your body's environment in extreme hot or cold is a genuine survival issue, not just a comfort issue. In winter conditions, indoor safe heaters, propane, butane, or electric, provide active warmth, but your backup should always be passive: layering wool blankets, sleeping bags, hats, gloves, and warm socks. Your wool is exceptional at trapping that heat, and critically, it continues insulating even when it's wet, unlike cotton, which loses almost all insulating capacity when damp. In hot climates or during summer power failures, the challenge flips. Heat is genuinely dangerous, particularly for elderly people and young children. USB-powered fans running off power banks provide real relief. Emergency space blankets, those thin metallic sheets, can be hung to block direct sunlight and drop temperatures in a room noticeably. They're lightweight, cheap, and incredibly versatile. They can reflect body heat back to you in cold conditions or block radiant heat from the sun in warm ones. Whatever your local climate, think about both temperature extremes. Weather patterns are unpredictable, and a warm region can see a winter storm just as a northern climate can see a heat emergency. Practice setting up your temperature management tools before you need them. Assembly under stress is significantly harder than assembly when calm. Let's shift to shelter, and specifically one of the most underrated pieces of gear in any kit, a tarp. A heavy-duty, waterproof tarp is one of the cheapest and most versatile tools you can own. It can cover a broken window, block wind coming through a damaged wall, create a rain shelter over an outdoor cooking area, collect rainwater, help with cleanup after flooding or wind damage, all for under $20. Practice rigging one with rope or bungee cords, without nails, without tools, in different configurations. Learn a few reliable knots. Understand how to create a weatherproof seal against wind-driven rain. If you need to leave your home, a basic tent provides real shelter, and familiarity with setting it up matters enormously. The moment of evacuation is not the time to read the instruction sheet. Practice. Know your gear before your gear has to know you. Now we get into one of the most critical and most consistently underprepared areas, medical readiness. Most people's first aid kits are dangerously inadequate. Bandages and antiseptic wipes are a starting point, not an end point. A proper emergency medical kit includes bandages in multiple sizes, sterile gauze pads, medical tape, antiseptic wipes, and pain relievers including ibuprofen and acetaminophen. Then you add fever reducers, antidiarrheal medication, antihistamines for allergic reactions, motion sickness tablets, and any prescription medications your family depends on with a minimum buffer supply if possible. Beyond that, include a thermometer, elastic bandages for sprains, burn treatment cream, rigid splints for immobilizing fractures, instant cold packs, CPR face shields, and at least one properly sourced tourniquet. That last item deserves to be said plainly. Severe bleeding can kill a person in under 3 minutes. A tourniquet applied correctly can stop that bleeding and save a life. It weighs almost nothing and it costs a few dollars. There is no reason not to have one. Keep a current visual first aid manual with your kit. Under genuine stress, memory is unreliable. Steps get skipped, panic takes over. A clear illustrated guide keeps you anchored to what needs to happen in sequence, even when your heart is pounding. And the single best investment you can make in medical preparedness? Take a course. A basic first aid class, a trauma care workshop, a CPR certification. These skills change everything. In a widespread emergency, professional medical help may be delayed by hours. You may be the only trained person available. Knowing what to do and having actually practiced it is worth more than any piece of gear in your kit. Hygiene is the next piece, and it's one that people consistently underestimate until they're miserable. When running water becomes unavailable, things deteriorate faster than expected. Wet wipes become one of your most valuable possessions. They handle personal cleaning, surface wiping, dish cleanup. They work for almost everything that normally requires running water. Stock a significant quantity. Hand sanitizer prevents illness from spreading when hand washing isn't possible. Biodegradable camp soap, like Castile soap, is versatile enough to use on skin, clothing, and surfaces. Don't skip dental and personal care. Toothbrushes, toothpaste, floss, feminine hygiene products, deodorant. After 2 weeks without proper oral care, dental problems can escalate into genuine health issues with no dentist available to treat them. These aren't luxuries, they're health maintenance. For waste management, heavy-duty trash bags, disposable gloves, and disinfectant wipes are essential. Managing waste properly in an emergency prevents disease from spreading through your living space. And beyond the physical benefits, cleanliness preserves morale. People who feel clean and organized manage stress better. Hygiene has a direct line.
Now let's talk about staying connected and informed, because being cut off from information is one of the most disorienting and dangerous aspects of a serious emergency. When cell towers go down or become overloaded, which happens fast in regional disasters, a dedicated weather radio becomes your primary information channel. These radios receive broadcasts directly from national weather services, delivering emergency alerts, storm updates, and official guidance, even when every other communication method has failed. Look for models with solar charging or hand crank power so they aren't dependent on batteries. For serious preparedness, two-way ham radios open up communication capability that goes well beyond local range. They require a license and practice to use legally and effectively, but that investment pays off enormously in a prolonged or widespread emergency. If you're committed to real preparedness, look into getting licensed. Never dismiss low-tech signaling either. A simple whistle carries several times farther than a shouted voice and requires almost no energy to use. A signal mirror can be seen from miles away under clear conditions. Agree on a household communication plan now, before anything happens. If you're separated from family members when something goes wrong, where do you meet? What signals do you use? These aren't questions to answer in the middle of a crisis. Power management connects directly to communication and overall function during an extended outage. Store spare batteries for every device you rely on, organized and labeled in sealed bags. Power banks and solar charging panels are essential tools, but build in redundancy. No single power solution covers every situation. Compact wind-up chargers, 12-volt vehicle adapters for running or recharging equipment. Layer your options. One note on vehicle power. Your car can serve as a charging station and power source, but be careful. A drained car battery is a serious problem if you need to evacuate or move to get supplies. Use vehicle power sparingly and strategically. Now let's talk tools, and there are two that stand genuinely apart from everything else: an axe and a shovel. These aren't glamorous, they won't show up in a flashy gear review, but in a real emergency, they're more useful than almost anything else you could own. An axe lets you process firewood, clear debris, break through obstacles, and build shelter components. A shovel lets you dig sanitation trenches, create drainage, move snow, clear blocked pathways, and handle dozens of other physical tasks that come up in real-world emergencies. Add a solid pair of work gloves to this category immediately. In any emergency involving manual labor, clearing debris, moving materials, building temporary structures, your hands take the punishment. Blisters, cuts, splinters, and abrasions reduce your ability to do anything. Protect your hands. Without functional hands, you are severely limited in every task that matters. Here's something that rarely gets the attention it deserves, and it belongs in the middle of this conversation, not at the end. Mental health and emotional resilience. The psychological toll of an emergency is real, serious, and often underestimated by people who think of preparedness in purely physical terms. Supplies matter, gear matters, but a person who is mentally broken isn't going to use those supplies effectively. Pack things that maintain morale and mental engagement: board games, books, headphones with downloaded content, a tablet loaded with movies, audiobooks, music. For children, simple games, coloring books, and small familiar toys provide comfort and prevent boredom from escalating into anxiety. Boredom in stressed kids becomes behavioral problems fast. Small distractions have an outsized positive effect. Maintaining routines is one of the most powerful psychological tools available in an emergency. Regular meal times, reading before sleep, evening games as a family. These familiar patterns create psychological anchors in an unfamiliar and frightening situation. They signal that life has structure, that there is a rhythm, that things are not completely out of control. Puzzles, sketchpads, Sudoku, podcasts downloaded offline, anything that engages the mind and breaks the cycle of anxious thinking. Constant focus on the crisis drives anxiety upward. Mental breaks are not indulgences, they are maintenance for the organ you rely on most. A family that can still share a laugh, that has something to look forward to each day, will endure a prolonged emergency significantly better than one sitting in silence and fear. Now there's one more area that gets ignored until the moment it becomes critically urgent, and that moment always comes at the worst possible time: documentation. When chaos arrives, proof of who you are and what you own suddenly becomes
Emergency aid, insurance claims, government assistance, medical access, all of it moves faster when you can verify your identity and situation quickly. Make copies of birth certificates, passports, insurance policies, property documents, marriage certificates, and any other critical identity or ownership records. Store printed copies in a waterproof, fireproof container. Keep digital copies on a USB drive stored in the same location or a separate secure location for redundancy. Maintain a small notebook with critical phone numbers written by hand: your doctor, your insurance agent, close family members, emergency contacts. When your phone battery dies and you can't charge it, that notebook is your lifeline to everyone you need to reach. Do not assume you have those numbers memorized. Under stress, people forget phone numbers they've dialed 100 times. Write them down. Keep that notebook with your emergency documents. You don't need to archive every document ever created in your life. Focus on the ones that prove who you are, what you own, and what coverage you have. Those are the documents that unlock recovery after a disaster. Organized, accessible, protected. Multiple household members should know exactly where they are. In an evacuation with minutes to spare, knowing exactly where your documents are located is the difference between leaving with what you need and leaving without it. Here's where everything we've covered connects into something larger than a checklist. Preparedness isn't a project you complete once and forget about. It's a practice. It's a mindset that becomes part of how you live. And that's actually good news because it means you don't have to do everything right now. You can build this layer by layer, week by week, at a pace that works for your life and your budget. Start with water and food this week. Just those two things. Get the basics established. Next week, address lighting and fire starting. The week after, look at your medical kit and identify the gaps. Then hygiene supplies, then communication tools, then documentation. Build the system gradually, test each component as you go, and involve your whole family in the process. Involving your family matters more than most people realize. When everyone knows where supplies are located, how to use the equipment, and what the plan is, your household functions as a coordinated unit instead of a collection of scared individuals. Run through your plan. Practice purifying water. Test your lighting. Cook a meal using only your stored food and your emergency stove. When you test your gear and practice your plans under calm conditions, two things happen. You identify problems before they matter, the filter cartridge that needs replacing, the stove that doesn't ignite properly, the sleeping bag that isn't as warm as advertised, and you build genuine confidence. Not false confidence, not the kind that comes from having a list checked off, the kind that comes from actually knowing what you're doing. Share what you're learning with people around you, not to alarm them, not to lecture them, just to help. Preparedness spreads most effectively through personal connection. When a neighbor sees that you're taking quiet, practical steps to protect your family, it plants a seed. Communities that are collectively prepared are exponentially more resilient than communities where only a few individuals are ready. You benefit when your neighbors are prepared because you become part of a network of capability instead of an island surrounded by crisis. The quietly prepared don't live in fear. That's the thing most people get wrong about this entire topic. The people who have taken these steps aren't anxious about the next disaster. They're calm. They sleep well. They read the news without spiraling because they've done the work. They have a foundation. They know that whatever disruption comes, they have the tools, the supplies, the knowledge, and the plan to protect their family through it. That calm is available to you. It's not a personality trait. It's not something you're born with. It's the byproduct of preparation. Every step you take builds a little more of it. Every gallon of water stored, every skill practiced, every plan made and tested, it all adds up to a version of yourself that can face uncertainty without being controlled by it. If this video gave you something useful, a new perspective, a specific action to take, a gap in your own preparedness you hadn't noticed before, then do something with that. Don't let this be content you watched and forgot. Write down one thing you're going to do this week. Buy that extra case of water. Pick up a first aid manual. Set that rotation reminder on your calendar. One thing. That's all it takes to start moving. And if you want to keep building on this foundation,
We cover real preparedness for real life, without the panic, without the extremism, and without the noise. Just clear, practical, actionable information that you can actually use. Smash the like button if this helped you, share it with someone who's been thinking about getting prepared but hasn't started yet, and we'll see you in the next one. The quietly prepared aren't waiting to see what happens next. They already know they can handle it. Start today, build this week, and keep going, because the peace of mind that comes from genuine readiness is one of the few things in life that is absolutely worth every bit of effort it takes to earn it.